So this is my first time. My heart is jackhammering like a 17-year-old on prom night. I swear to God, I'm a little nervous. But anyway, I have 2 kids. I have an 18-year-old son. I have a 14-year-old daughter. About 3 years ago, my son said wanted to go to New York. So I took him to New York for a trip. We had a great time. And afterward, I thought, maybe next year I'll take my daughter. So following year, set up a trip, took my daughter, went up on a Saturday morning, spent the day in New York, saw a show, had a great time, had an early dinner, and then we had the rest of the evening just to kind of do what we wanted to do. So we're thinking, what next? Walking around Times Square, I looked up and there's Caroline's Comedy Club. I had taken my son to the comedy club the year before when he was 15, and I thought my daughter is 12, but she's a mature 12. And then I also thought, it's a 7 o'clock show. It's not gonna be too bad. Nothing awful's gonna happen here. And so I thought, you wanna go to the comedy club? My daughter's like, absolutely. So buy a ticket, go inside. First act comes up, it's a woman. 5 minutes into her act, she's on stage, she looks in the crowd, she goes, ladies, remember when you were a teenage girl and you gave your first hand job? Everyone in the crowd's laughing. It was actually a really funny act. She's like, you know, the kid's good, the guy's good to go, you're just slapping it around, everyone's laughing at what she's saying, and I'm just standing there, I'm just sitting in the seat, like, kind of looking down. I feel my daughter looking at me, and I don't want to look at her, but I look over, and she leans in, she goes, Dad, what's a hand job? I was relieved that she had to ask that question, by the way. So I just diffused it. I said, honey, listen, we'll wait until the end of the show. Let's watch the rest of the show. I'm not going to get into it here. In my heart, I'm praying to God that she forgets to ask the question at the end of the show. Show's over. We leave. Walk out on Times Square. She turns and says, Dad, what's a hand job? And so there are 2 takeaways from this conversation. The first is, I don't remember a goddamn thing I said to her. Not at all. The second thing is that she and I both agreed that her mother will never hear any part of this story whatsoever. So 2 weeks later, my daughter and my kids, both of my kids are at my place, and my daughter and I are sitting in the living room and we're talking about the trip and we're chuckling about it a little bit and we're talking about all of it. And my son comes walking out and he's like, what's so funny? And my daughter, understandably, my son and my daughter actually tell each other everything. I'm surprised she didn't tell him this already, but she turns and looks at him and says, Dad and I were just laughing because 2 weeks ago he had to tell me what a hand job was. My son, who's now 16 years old, very innocent, swear to God, turns to me and goes, what's a hand job? I looked at him in front of my daughter and I said, you're effing kidding me, right? And he goes, no. I didn't say effing, but I'll say it for this stage. And I'm like, okay. So I thought about it for a minute and I explained it differently to my memory at the time than I did to my daughter. I simply said, well, you know what masturbation is, right? And he's like, yep. I said, hand jobs, just like masturbation, only your significant other is doing it to you rather than you doing it to yourself. And he's like, oh, okay. As the okay comes out of his mouth, I hear out of my left ear my daughter go, Dad, what's masturbation? So, in the end, I had to teach both of my children 3 very awkward lessons about sexuality. Thank you very much.